This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is a Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and joining me, as always, is Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
And Ricky is in California right now at VidCon. I know the lighting probably might suck right now on this video. I know it was really rough on the two videos.
There's like no focus, yeah.
Yeah, no focus. The Jimmy Buffett shirt didn't go well with that. But Brandon and Ricky just went to a lighting seminar at VidCon, so there we go.
We're going to learn the tools of the trade.
Hopefully get some better lights, and hopefully we can improve the quality for you. But anyways, we're talking about the NBA draft. If you have not checked out the Zach LaVine and Jimmy Butler trades, we already talked about those. Those are already up on YouTube, so go check those out. We're talking about the NBA draft. We're covering the Sixers, Lakers, Celtics, Kings, and Knicks, and Dallas, too. So we got 6 teams we're talking about in this this whole podcast. So if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, thank you so much. Well, let's jump into it, Dave. First team we're talking about is the 76ers, becoming possibly my favorite team, because I don't have a favorite team right now. I don't have a team I root for.
You do not have a dedicated fan yet.
I don't.
Your fandom is missing.
I don't have a fandom yet, and it's really looking like the 76ers, because you look at this team and how loaded they are for the future. Obviously drafting Markelle Fultz, number 1, trading with Boston to get that pick. You also have Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Dario Saric, TLC, Rocco, a ton of young players overseas, a ton of young players that they just drafted.
Yep.
So the question we are kind of posing here is, does Markelle Fultz complete the process?
As so much that now they will start to compete for a playoff spot? Yes. I think because they still have a couple draft picks left in their pocket, I think they're going to continue adding more talent to it, but I think this is the turning point. This is when we see the shining light come through, that this year is the year we're going to get to see Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid on the court at the same time, and that is one of the scariest cores of the future. Like, those 3 guys, I mean, Christ, the hype levels are off the charts already, because we haven't gotten to see a full season out of Embiid. We haven't gotten to see the full season out of Ben Simmons at all.
I bet it's Simmons. We haven't seen any actual regular season games.
So it'll be Fultz and he as rookies, assuming they don't continue with their redshirt freshman strategy by poor medical treatment.
Yeah.
You know?
That's one thing that obviously they need to take care of is the actual bodies. And Brian Colangelo coming out and saying, I believe you said on Mike and Mike this morning, that there's not going to be a minutes restriction on any player.
By October, he expects to see Fultz, Embiid, and Ben Simmons, no minutes restriction by October, and then quickly disputed by Brent Brown, saying that's optimistic.
So we'll see what happens there, but still, that's something that we have to worry about. But even if an Embiid or a Simmons or a Fultz goes down, you still have those 2 other players. So looking at all of this, I know you're really read up and very well read on the process in general.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
And the whole thing was to get a ton of draft picks and then trade it for players of value. So at least right now is the step to move to progress happening, because we see Markelle Fultz, we see Ben Simmons, we see Joel Embiid, 3 future stars in the NBA. We see Dario Saric, a guy who looks like a phenomenal starter in the NBA. Rocco's a really decent contributor. TLC looks like a really young kid.
Yep.
So is this going to start moving towards progress now too, because they still have a ton of cap space as well to bring in players.
They do, and that's why I kind of expect, I could see this being the last year that they're going to do a take on a bad contract for a draft pick deal. Like, this is the final year that, in my mind, it's acceptable for them. Going forward, I think we're gonna see the end of these veterans hanging around the roster, and I do like the contribution from Bayless and Henderson and guys like that who have helped contribute over the years to making sure this locker room is correct. I remember Okafor's impact in the locker room. Not Ja, but the older Okafor, earlier. Emeka, early 2000s draft pick.
Old UConn.
Yep. His impact was actually pretty big. And when you have a locker room full of guys under 25 like that, you need to make sure that there's a clear leader, that they're all getting along, and that they all see like the common, like, this is where we're going. This is why we're busting our asses today to get to this place. So I think they're at that point where it's like, all right, one more bad deal, and that's the best case scenario. And then going forward, it's, all right, we will know if Nick Stauskas is our, is he going to be our answer? Are we going to go get a sharpshooter in free agency?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I want to bring up here is, do they need to take on a bad contract, or can they go out and get a guy like that, like a Kyle Korver, like a J.J. Redick?
I'd say J.J. over Kyle, but yeah.
Well, just any veteran. Yep. You can sign Kyle to a shorter contract, and maybe that would help out with cap space, where J.J. will probably want a longer contract. But still, those guys have experience in the playoffs. Obviously, Kyle just went to the NBA Finals. JJ's been in and out of the playoffs with the Clippers. Hasn't made it past the second round.
Continual disappointment of the Clippers.
But still, at least bringing one of those guys, would you see that happening more, or do you think it's going to be a bad contract? Because
I think one more year a bad contract because, again, you said they have so many guys under contract right now. Like they could potentially have like 20 guys on their roster, and I know you can't do that. You're capped out at 17, and that's with a couple D-League contracts in there. Yes, they've got guys overseas, which is smart, but it's still they need to get an answer. Like I think right now they are sold at center. They have Joel Embiid and they have Holmes as his backup, who is quality. Ja coming off the bench as a scorer, but other than that, he's dead weight.
Do you think Ja's going to be on this team any longer?
I could.
I mean, we haven't heard a lot of Ja trade rumors
that's the thing,
coming up.
like,
we also haven't seen them kind of bonding. We see Ben, Joel, Markelle, Rocco up there, all combining for that one pick when Markelle tried out, but Ja's not there. So do you think that he's got a future?
I think he's the odd man out. He knows it. The franchise knows it, and it's just a matter of finding the right fit to move him and the right value.
They really haven't found what they were looking for value-wise, and that's why they haven't moved him?
It's hard to admit that you have a number 3 pick overall, right? Or who was 3?
Yeah, 3.
And you're moving on from him so quickly. And this is the guy who, put up 18 and 8 his rookie year. But when he doesn't fit stylistically with what you want to do and where the NBA is going, I think they just have to move along and admit that, hey, we missed on that one.
Well, and we'll get to this a little bit later when we get to the Lakers talk. But obviously, we look at that draft and those outside of the number 1 pick in Cat, you look at 2, 3, and 4, all have been involved in trade rumors. And D'Angelo Russell just got traded.
He did.
So you look at that, and KP was just obviously in trade rumors as well with the Knicks. So do you think it's something, and obviously KP, the lowest pick out of that, has the highest trade value. So do you think it's something that maybe they're going to try to match what the Lakers got for D'Angelo Russell, or do you think it's completely different because Ja's a completely different player playing a different position with a different outlook?
I think the demand is different for a center in today's NBA. I think that Russell was heavily criticized, obviously because he was playing in LA, but on top of that, there's a lot of pressure at point guard. And he has a personality, so again, it doesn't do him any favors. Ja is a guy who is very lethargic, slow around the basket, and honestly, the biggest complaint about him is his lack of effort, one way or the other. So I could see him honestly going to a team. In my mind, if you put him on the Suns, I think they could turn something around with him. I think that he could be effective on their team. If I'm the Suns, I don't know if I want him, but I'm just trying to I think that fit-wise,
finding a fit is
if you can find a better fit for him around the league, I think that's the best way to do it, because otherwise he's not your answer at starting center. He's not able to play power forward with you, and he's not your backup center either. So, I mean, at this point, you need to move him for some value.
Yeah, why waste a guy who was the 3rd overall pick on your bench
and again,
coming off the bench?
He can score. He has amazing post moves for someone. He's still super young.
21,
so come on. There's got to be some value for it, but it's not going to be a ton.
And what the thing I want to bring up is because I wrote down at least trying to build out this starting lineup of the future, because we have Fultz, we have Simmons, we have Embiid. Those 3 are locks.
Right.
But we talked about this before. Dario Saric came up. Dario Saric seems like a focal point, if pretty much the 4th guy in that bunch. But you said you can't play Simmons, Embiid in the same lineup, and Saric in the same lineup.
Yeah.
Those 3 in the same lineup. So what would be Saric's role? And then looking at the other players on this team, who would fill that starting lineup at least for this year? I mean, obviously, it's going to be depending on free agency if they bring in a sharpshooter, but building from the roster they currently have.
Right.
Fultz is going to be your point guard. You need a 2 guard. You have Simmons either at your power forward or small forward, and then Embiid as your center. So who is the 2 other players that are going to be put in there, because you're saying that Saric isn't going to be in there?
Yeah, no, I could... First off, I think Saric's best role, or the one that makes him most effective, is being the leader of the second unit. I think he and TJ McConnell pair really well. We got to watch them for an extended amount of time at the end of this last season, pretty much from the All-Star break on. It was a team led by the 2 of them, and there's some good chemistry there, good ball movement. You have 2 floor generals, much like you will with Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, obviously to a lesser extent with TJ and Dario, but still very capable hands there. As far as the rest of the starting lineup, I could easily see, I think my lineup is still going to be filling in Rocco and TLC at the 2 and the 3, and then Ben would be the 4. And I think that lineup is the lineup of the future. This year, I think they're still going to play with things and see fit wise, because again, we've only seen these guys where Joel Embiid was the option on offense. Then it was Dario is the option on offense. Then it was TLC was the option on offense.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them coexist on the floor at the same time. So I think this year, I honestly don't know how they're going to get off to a start. I think Summer League is going to be a good preview because a lot of these guys are so young. They're still in Summer League.
Yeah, I mean, Fultz and Simmons are going to be in the Summer League.
So it's taking that step. And then the next thing is like the first month of the year is experimenting. I think Brett Brown has a lot of time to get his handle on how he wants to craft these rotations because it's so important to make sure these young kids get good minutes and good touches on the ball with these early rotations.
Actually, saying that coming out of my mouth sounded weird. Ben Simmons in the Summer League, do you think it happens?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Because, I mean, he did get hurt in that area. I mean, he injured his foot in that. So do you think they even risk it? Do you think?
I think they do. I mean, they probably
maybe he plays a game.
Yeah, I think it's a knock off the rust kind of a thing. Like, let's see how. Like, you do off-season workouts, but off-season workouts don't get you in game shape. There's a difference between working out and game shape. Like, I'm not saying it's night and day, but there is a heavy difference there, especially with conditioning. In my mind, yeah, we're gonna see him for maybe 1 to 2 games in the Summer League, and it's just like hey, let's make sure he's still got his touch, make sure his conditioning is in key with where he needs to be, and then you let him, obviously go off, continue his individual workouts or the team workouts on the side.
And let's go back a little bit back to the starting lineup because I cut in there just a bit. But, I was wondering just because you did see some flashes out of him, but then again, do you want to risk a guy that's already being injured to throw him back in the Summer League if he's going to be
fair risk,
two option or one option or whatever he's going to be? But going back to that, you have Fultz, TLC, Simmons, Rocco, and Embiid as your starting five of the future. Would you say that TLC might not be in that, and he might be paired with Sarge and McConnell, and they might throw in a guy like Gerald Bayless or a guy like Gerald Henderson and throw those guys in, at least outside of the guys that they could bring in a free agency, or a Nick Stauskas, because weirdly enough, he is a veteran in compared to these guys. Do you think that he gets thrown in?
I think there's going to be a lot of play in the first couple months this year. I don't think this is like cemented anywhere. This is just from what I've seen last year. I mean, for all I know, like Furkan could come over in the future and just become a knockdown stud at the 2 or the 3, and they've got their answer there. But right now, with what they've got, I think TLC, obviously, you could move off to that second unit to give them some much needed scoring. And I would be comfortable putting Jared Bayless playing off ball. He does give you a good look. Obviously, he got injured last year, but I think either he or Henderson would be comfortable filling in off guard and be perfectly fine. Stauskas, I'm a little more concerned with. Obviously,
the mayor of Philadelphia,
Sauce Castillo, he's good in stretches, but when he's bad, he just sucks so bad.
Similar
and his
to
decision making is just awful.
Similar to a Mirotic on the Bulls. Like he can get he can either have a super hot week or he can be dead weight on your team.
Yeah.
What I want to go to then is kind of wrapping it up and putting a nice little bow on this.
Sure.
Fultz, Simmons, Embiid. How do you see them playing together, both offensively in sets and then defensively? Who's going to be the leader on defense? Who's going to be the leader on offense? And then looking offensively, how do you think this is going to run? Do you think it's going to be more Fultz off ball and Simmons leading the point? Do you think it's going to be a lot of pick and roll sets? How do you think it's going to work out, at least offensively first?
I honestly see them falling under a similar mold to what the Cavaliers do with running Ben Simmons similar to LeBron James and Fultz to Kyrie. Yeah. I think that is a fairly good matchup for them, or a very good template for them to follow. The big question there is obviously you don't have someone like Caleb to stretch out. You have Joel Embiid instead.
Yeah.
So I mean it's apples to oranges, but still I don't think that they would be unhappy with split time being the primary ball handler. I think it's very much going to be by committee for them. Ben Simmons, amazing passing quality. Like he's a better passer than Fultz, bar none. Mm-hmm. But Fultz with the ball in his hand has a killer instinct to him that Ben doesn't have. So I think it's going to be situational. I think Ben Simmons will have the majority of the duty, but I think it will still be, 60-40.
A couple things I want to bring up. Would you say that, and this is the only reason I'm bringing it up because we talk about the Cavs, you talked about Rocco being in this lineup. Do you think they would put in Holmes over Rocco and have him play a similar Tristan Thompson kind of style, because he is around 6'8", he is a smaller guy compared to a center, but he's still very hyperactive, can jump out of the building. Fun fact, he's from Moraine Valley, Just found that out. He went to Moraine Valley for a year. Also graduated from Lockport.
I did not know that.
But that's something where you look at Holmes, and he's not a huge guy out there, but he does have the body, he does have a size, and he does have the jumping ability. So do you think he could play, if we're following this Cavs mold, do you think he could play a similar mold to Tristan Thompson, and then Embiid can kind of float around a little bit like Caleb, but maybe have a little more hands-on action?
That's fair. My only concern there is look, Rocco is probably I know he's undervalued right now as one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. I could see him getting a fairly large payday next year. To me, I think the ability to stretch the floor compensates more than having another big rim protector in Holmes. He plays above his height, like you said. He's either like 6'8" or 6'10", depending on where you look. But again,
call
like
it
you
even,
said,
call it 6'9", whatever. Yeah.
Again, the dude can jump. He's a pretty good rim protector. In limited time, he's been very efficient. So I love his fit. It's just more so I think the spacing coming from having another 3-point shooter, and Rocco's defense is bar none the best on the team. So I don't think that you can take him out of that starting lineup, because when you're going up against top tier teams, it's small forward for small forward, and no offense, like that's where the league has gone. Like every high impact, amazing player outside of, there are a couple exceptions, is a small forward. So you need someone who can guard that wing position. And I am pretty comfortable with Robert Covington doing that for me.
And one thing I want to bring up and kind of wrapping up, when we look at all the draft picks that they have kind of accumulated in this process,
22 second rounders,
there's still more out there. I mean, you have the 2018 first round draft pick from the Lakers that might go to the Celtics.
Right.
If it falls
the 2 through 5.
2 through 5. Yeah. If it falls to the 2 through 5, then the Celtics get that. But if it's the number 1 overall pick, which I don't think it won't. Well,
you don't know.
We'll
if they don't get Paul George.
We'll see what happens with the Lakers. But I don't think it's going to be the number 1 overall
Probably
pick.
not.
And then also, they'll still have a probably 6 and later pick. So looking at that, what direction do they go to in the draft? Obviously not a player, because I mean we're so early on into the scouting.
I mean, if they get the one at this point, it looks like Porter Jr.
But I mean, that's crazy, because you're having
dude's
a guy
monster.
just like Simmons or Simmons-esque.
I don't care.
I mean,
you don't pass
he might
up
even
on
be
a
better than
monster
Porter.
like that.
I know, that's just crazy thinking that you could add a kid like Porter Jr. on this team.
That's the thing. That's why you have to turn around and be like, thank you, Sam Hinkie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, because that team, you did it right.
And at least I was a little bit worried on Brian Colangelo coming in. I thought he was going to ruin this. I thought he was going to kind of take it away.
The question there is still how he handled Noel and John. I think that's one where it's going to take a little time to look back and see where could they have gone, and not hearing all the trade options available when they should have pulled the trigger. So I
think, and obviously, but still going and getting a Fultz is still bold. And I think they made a hell of a move there.
I think it is, because it was a need, and they were in that spot where it's like, look, we're the 3. We're missing out on the 1-2 premier players in this draft, which are both point guards, which we desperately need.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that they went and pulled that trigger. Like, give Colangelo some credit for that. But in the future drafts, I don't know where they go. This is a test year. Are
they looking for a 2 guard? Are they looking for a guy who is very kind of locked in, like say like a Jonathan Isaac? I mean, again,
in my mind,
like a Jonathan Isaac who's great defensively, but plays like the 2.
In my mind, they're probably going to go for a stretch 4, and Ben, if he's able to keep up like they thought he would, be able to play 1 through 4 basically for that. Well, not obviously not the 2, but with his speed, be able to keep up. Honestly, I think they go for a stretch 4. And that's the next direction, but you're going to have to give it some time. You have to see what they've got. I mean, they went bold with Jonah Bolden in the second round.
We'll see how he develops. People love Jonah Bolden in our comment section.
Hype train on him coming into the draft. He was a guy who was early on at like 58 on the big board, and he made it all the way up to being picked at 36.
Yep.
So there's a guy who has potential in the future.
They went and traded for AP at 25th, a guy that's...
Right. Orlando just passed on that one.
An old school center there. I mean, he's a guy that's... I mean, he can run the floor a little bit, but he's going to be an inside guy. He's not going to be stretching out of the floor.
Yeah, it's a long-term wait and see. So
obviously, like you said, getting Jonah Bolden, backup point guard, and Juwan Evans. I mean, they had a nice draft overall. I mean,
it's just they don't got room for all these players. It's like, what are you going to do with them all,
Again, we were looking it up and making sure, because the new CBA allows you to have 17 players, 2 of them going in the D League under contract. So it's going to be
some decisions to be made, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, I think that this year is the year of, all right, what do we actually have when they're all on the court, when they're all playing, so you can make that decision. Because I honestly can see someone like TJ McConnell, or not TJ, well, even him. I mean, he's probably pretty safe as the backup point guard unless Juwan Evans comes out and really surprises us.
Yeah. I mean, TJ was a surprise last year.
Yeah, he was. Stauskas, though, I think is on the bubble at this point. Justin Anderson, I know a lot of people are high on him, but seeing Alex Poythress possibly come back from that injury and Poythress. I'm sorry. Come back and actually didn't look too bad. So again, you have a lot of guys who you're still waiting to see, how they're going to pan out. So I think this year is the make or break year for them, and that's their vision going forward.
I keep saying final question, but do they take any of the, and this is just out there, do they take anything out of any of these draft picks that they do have, that they have accumulated, and then go and get somebody that fits this mold? Like, say, I wish that they would trade some picks to Chicago. I don't even know what we'd give them, but I'll take anything you guys want to throw away. I don't think there's any players that
Dwayne Wade goes to
Jesus, that's the last thing they need.
I know.
But do you think, and not a specific player, but do you think that might be the more move, or do you think they'll go back to the draft?
No, I think Colangelo showed us with the draft move that he's not afraid to pull the trigger on stuff. He moved Nerlens for two twos. So I think that he, given the chance, will probably trade Ja this season. I think that probably Ja and someone else will get moved off this team during this year. And a lot of these other decisions will kind of fall out as we see them play, like who doesn't fit in. Because it's going to be a thing. Like, in my mind, this is how it's going to work. But when we watch them play, it's going to be a standout. Like, yeah, that worked better in my head. We maybe need to either switch the lineup or move him away from us, or maybe he's not the right answer for us going forward.
Yeah. All right. Well,
lots of hype, though.
There's going to be a lot of Sixer news to talk about. I mean, this team looks absolutely scary.
I will give you guys Sixer content as much as possible.
And it will be absolutely fun to watch these three and more. I mean, off this bench.
That's the thing. It's the three biggest names in the last 3 years of the draft, last 4 years of the draft, and then it's just like, but they got so many more. They're like 20 deep in prospects.
It's unreal. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
Again, Furkan's over, and Furkan was higher than TLC last year when drafting wise. I mean, and Furkan was a guy that was a deadly shooter.
He went 26 to 24. So
oh, that's right. My bad.
TLC went two, but yeah,
he was higher on most people. Boards is what I was saying, because I usually had him last year in like top 15.
Yeah,
Furkan was a dead-eye shooter, so I mean it's going to be interesting to see how he develops, how all of these players develop. But anyways, tell us in the comments down below: is the process complete? Is there more to do in Philly? What needs to be done in Philly?
They go after a big free agent. Do they suck on a contract for another draft pick or maybe quality player attached?
And do they make the playoffs this year? Because I think Dave and I are set that they're going to make the playoffs.
The East is weak, man. It's like you have the West, then you have the E League, then you have the G League,
and it looks like a playoff spot is opened after this Bulls trade. So again, tell us who you think is going to tell us who is the process complete is really what we're trying to say here.